Welcome to the Student Success Workshop, Mastering Your Study Skills, the Adult Student's Guide to Success, sponsored by the Office of Academic Advising for the Huizenga College of Business. This presentation will prepare you as you begin your master's program or will help you reevaluate your current study skills. If you have questions or would like to discuss study skills further, please call the Office of Academic Advising and schedule an appointment with a student success coach. Whether you completed your bachelor's degree 5 months ago or 15 years ago, it's important to acknowledge that how you best study may have changed. Furthermore, if your graduate degree is completely different from your undergraduate degree, you may need to modify how you study. This workshop will cover methods to improve your concentration, techniques for scholarly reading, note-taking methods, and provide links to several websites for additional information. Concentration is defined as the ability to give something our undivided attention to the exclusion of other distractions. While most adults are able to tune out distractions for 35 to 45 minutes at a time, your concentration span may vary. Therefore, it's important to know and respect your abilities and be aware of when you are susceptible to internal and external distractions, and then learn how to minimize them. There are many ways to improve your concentration. For example, the Pomodoro technique is a popular productivity method that hones your concentration in on a task for a short amount of time while taking frequent breaks. You'll find a link for this specific technique at the end of the presentation. Take it upon yourself to research techniques and try a few of them. The PATS model is an acronym that stands for Pick Your Best Environment, Always Reduce Visual Distractions, Try to Find Your Optimal Noise Level, and Self-Talk to Control Internal Distractions. The first 3 components address external distractions, and the last component addresses internal distractions. To pick the best environment, determine where, when, and how you study the best. Perhaps working in your office after hours, maybe the library or a coffee shop, late at night or early in the morning when the kids are asleep. Do you need frequent breaks, or is it more efficient for you to power through for hours on end? Try a few places at different times of the day to find out which is best for you. Make sure that you're physically comfortable in the room. It shouldn't be too bright or too cold for you. If you can't change your environment, adapt. Unscrew a light bulb and bring a sweater. The goal is to ensure you are not distracted by external factors. Minimize visual distractions like the TV, people passing by in your line of sight, and your cell phone. Do you need to face away from the window? High-walled cubicles are an excellent way to tune out the rest of the world. Place your cell phone face down on the desk. Or better yet, put your phone away. Make a deal with yourself to check your cell phone no more than once an hour. What is your optimal level of noise? If you need absolute silence, invest in a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Do you need noise in the background? If so, find out what volume works best for you. If you'd like to listen to music, determine if lyrics are a distraction. Obviously, if lyrics are a distraction, it's best you listen to music with no lyrics. Acknowledge unrelated thoughts that surface, then write them down and plan to address them later. This is how you self-talk to control internal distractions. For example, while studying for your econ exam, you remember that you need to schedule a dentist appointment. Write yourself a note and then make a deal with yourself that you will call the office right after you finish reading this chapter. Once you incorporate the PATS model into your normal study routine, you'll be able to concentrate on the task at hand because you've eliminated external and internal distractions. Once you've determined how best to improve your concentration by focusing on the task at hand and minimizing distractions, you're ready to get to work. During the course of your graduate studies, you will have a large amount of reading: textbooks, journal articles, case studies, etc. Scholarly reading is very different from reading for pleasure, and in order to maximize your time, you'll need to learn how to read as efficiently as possible. Scholarly reading is very different from reading for pleasure, and in order to maximize your time, you'll need to learn how to read as efficiently as possible. This means avoiding rereading because you did not retain the knowledge. The reading method we'll discuss today is called the SQ3R method. The SQ3R method was introduced in 1946 and promotes active reading through 5 steps: surveying, questioning, reading, reciting, and reviewing written material. Active reading promotes long-term retention as opposed to passive reading, which normally leads to short-term retention of knowledge. This method is designed to help you read faster and retain more of what you read. These steps are not completed sequentially. Some of these steps will be completed concurrently. You'll start by obtaining an overview of the material and determining what to read for. At that point, you'll actually read the material while memorizing key facts. You'll complete the process by reviewing your knowledge. Part of scholarly reading is taking notes. This section will use the Cornell note-taking method as an example, though you will use your preferred method. Note-taking will be discussed in greater detail in the next section. In the first step, survey, scan the material to develop an outline of the text you're about to read. Review headings, introductory sentences, any graphics, and any other key items you notice. You will only spend a few minutes getting background knowledge, which will help you organize the material as you read, as well as ease you into the reading assignment. As you're surveying, you will also be engaging in the second step of the SQ3R method. Questioning what you're reading. For each heading, introductory sentence, and caption, develop a question. For example, the chapter title for your economic thinking class is Demand and Elasticity. Ask yourself, what is demand? What is elasticity? If you're using the Cornell note-taking method, write these questions in the left margin of the page. This is a straightforward concept that you probably already use, but implementing the strategy will make you pause instead of immediately reading your text. Pausing to consider what you're about to read is part of the active reading process. Now you're ready to read the material. However, instead of simply reading the text, read to answer the questions you formulated during the survey and questioning stages. Simply reading is passive reading. Reading to answer questions is active reading, which will store the knowledge in your long-term memory. If you finish the section and still haven't answered the questions, reread the section and consider what the author is trying to impart and how you can use this information. You'll continue taking notes as you read. If you use the Cornell method, these notes will be written on the right side of your paper. As you're reading and taking notes, glance away from your book and notes to recite the answers to your questions, using your own words and examples. This is a memorization technique called chunking, which will be discussed later in the presentation. Repeat this stage until you're able to remember the questions and answers from memory. This means that you understand the material. The last stage is to review your notes for accuracy and clarity. If needed, refer to the text to edit your notes. Once your notes are finalized, there will be little to no need to refer to your textbook in the future. Incorporate the recite process of SQ3R in this stage and memorize your notes. At this point in SQ3R, you have actively read the material, took notes as you read, paused to test your memory, and are now fine-tuning your comprehension of the text. This information should now be in your long-term memory. As you become more skilled in this method, you'll move through each stage more efficiently and find that not only are you reading faster, but you're retaining what you have read. Memory has been mentioned a few times, so let's discuss this in more detail. In the recite and review stages of SQ3R, the goal is to incorporate the readings into your long-term memory instead of your short-term memory. You're likely to forget an idea stored in your short-term memory within minutes, if not seconds. Strive to store your newfound knowledge in your long-term memory. You'll then be able to retrieve the ideas and facts you learn in your master's program decades later. Years after you graduate, you'll remember what elasticity and demand are because of your economic thinking class. Not only will you be able to retrieve this information at any time, you can use this power of recall to expand upon existing ideas and make connections to concepts learned at a later date. Finally, your long-term storage capacity is infinite. There's no limit to the amount of knowledge you can retain. There are innumerable methods to improve your memory. However, the best method for you will depend on your learning style and even the subject. The methods from the field of cognitive psychology listed here were selected because of their applicability to the SQ3R reading method. First, chunking, or learning small amounts of information and then combining the information, is used when you're surveying, reciting, and reviewing. Second, elaborative rehearsal, or putting it into your own words. This method enforces the active reading process because you formulate questions, answer those questions when reading, and write notes on the answers in order to recite and review. The information is now meaningful to you and more likely to be stored in your long-term memory. Third, dual coding uses multiple senses, such as verbal and visual memory, to retain the knowledge long-term. In SQ3R, you see, write, and say, reinforcing retention at each step. Fourth is the spacing effect, which is that the best study intervals match the retention level. This means that you should avoid cramming for an exam by spacing out your reviews. For example, if the exam is 3 weeks away, study once a week. If the exam is 1 week away, study once every other day. And if the exam is 2 days away, study every day. Memory retention techniques are usually built into most study methods. However, you can incorporate retention techniques into your personalized method. We've discussed techniques to improve your concentration, the SQ3R method of scholarly reading, and methods to retain information in your long-term memory. Note-taking is how you'll transfer new knowledge into your long-term memory. You'll take notes as you read, listen to lectures, and watch videos, for example. This is an integral component of your study skills and greatly impacts your success as a student. Just like memory improvement methods, there are many methods to note-taking. This too will depend on your specific preference, and you'll want to research your options, try a few of them, and determine what works best for you. 3 popular methods are mind mapping, the outline method, and the Cornell notes method. I'll provide an example of each method and discuss their advantages as well as any disadvantages. The first method, mind mapping, is an excellent choice for visual learners due to the use of diagramming and has a number of useful applications. You may be familiar with this technique from brainstorming and team building sessions with a group where mind mapping has proven especially effective. For note-taking purposes, the mind mapping technique is used to build an outline and condense material. We'll look at an example on the next slide. Mind maps can take many different forms, so it doesn't need to adhere to this example. In this example of a mind map, the key concept is located in the middle of the page, and related ideas are branching out of the central shape. When editing your notes, you can use different colors for each branch or idea, include drawings, or write questions as a few examples. The advantages of this technique are that it allows you to visually track a lecture, whether the professor follows a strict format or ad-libs. This is also an excellent design to see an overview of a chapter, article, or lecture. At a glance, it's easy to see the connection between the central theme and its offshoots. However, you may not have enough space on a sheet of paper, and the sheet may become visually crowded. Using a computer instead of a sheet of paper can resolve this issue. Another disadvantage you may experience during a lecture is that you may not hear the changes in content because it's easy to simply write down whatever is being said. The second note-taking method we'll review today is the outline method. By far, this is the most popular note-taking method and is probably what you're most familiar with using. In this traditional method, a theme is broken down into multiple subsections, which may then be broken down into even more subsections. The more general information begins at the left, and as the information becomes more specific, the information is indented to the right. You can use Roman numerals, letters, or even dashes to denote the specificity. The advantages of outlining your notes is that this is a well-organized system that records content as well as relationships and reduces editing, whether you are reading or listening to a lecture. Use this in conjunction with the SQ3R method by listing your main points as questions, which is part of the questioning stage. But be cautious using this method during loosely organized lectures because it may require extensive editing to place the information in a logical sequence. The last note-taking method we will discuss is the Cornell notes method. A template is shown here and we'll review an example on the next slide. In this method, separate each sheet of paper or page into 3 sections by drawing a vertical line approximately 2 inches from the left margin and drawing a horizontal line a couple of inches from the bottom of the page. During class or while reading, take notes on the right using your preferred method. The example shown here uses the outline method. After class or after completing a section of reading, extract the main points, questions, key dates, etc. from your notes and place them in the left margin. The last step is to summarize your notes on the bottom of the page. Here we have an example of lecture notes. The notes are on the right, the student formulated questions on the left, and then summarized the notes at the bottom. When studying for an exam or preparing for the next class meeting, the student will dedicate most of his or her time reviewing the questions on the left and answering them, and then reviewing the summary. The main advantage of this method is that this is an easy format for isolating major concepts and condenses notes without the need for recopying or extensive editing. There are built-in triggers for active reading, the left margin, and reviewing, summary at the bottom, to improve retention. One possible disadvantage of this method during lectures is that the student may not be as selective when taking notes, knowing that the next step built into the process is extracting the key points. This could have been done during the actual note-taking in class. These are specific strategies for the Cornell Notes method. However, most of these strategies can be used with any other method. Stay organized. Take note of the class, date, chapter, etc. for each note-taking session. This will enable you to quickly locate a specific set of notes. Write notes. Leave room around your notes to add or clarify information when you're reviewing. Complete sentences are unnecessary. Use your own shorthand. Review and clarify. Review your notes right away and extract pertinent information. Summarize. At the bottom of the page if using Cornell, or perhaps on a note card if using another method. Study your notes. Review your notes from the last lecture just prior to going to class or as you approach an exam date. Spend the majority of your time reviewing the key points, summaries, and any questions you may need to have answered. For more information on areas covered in this presentation, access the websites listed. To improve your concentration, get more information about the Pomodoro method at pomodorotechnique.com. You will find additional tips on SQ3R on YouTube, several mind mapping apps on the Lifehacker website, and more study tips at the last two links listed. In summary, you now have specific tools you can use to improve your study skills. The PATS model will improve your concentration by minimizing distractions in order for you to focus on your studying. SQ3R guides you through active reading in order to retain new knowledge in your long-term memory. We also discussed strategies to improve your long-term memory in relation to SQ3R. We reviewed several note-taking methods, mind mapping, outlining, and Cornell notes. Finally, continue your research on other methods using the links provided on the additional resources slide. Please feel free to contact the Office of Academic Advising at 954-262-5067 and request an appointment with our student success coaches if you have questions or would like to discuss further. Please feel free to contact the Office of Academic Advising at 954-262-5067 and request an appointment with our student success coaches if you have questions or would like to discuss study skills further.